One is Enough by Flora Nwapa. Chapter 5. Amaka was ready before 5 in the morning to go to the ministry to see a friend of her brother-in-law who had asked her to come to see her. "Wait until it is at least 5:30, her sister said, surprised that she was ready to go to Lagos. "And besides, you have to eat something. Have some tea or coffee and bread, please. And Amaka, you have to take it easy in Lagos." That was Amaka's sister, Ayo, who lived in Surulere with her children. Amaka chose to go to the ministry early so that she would see the man. So she set out. She walked for a good 10 minutes before she got to the bus stop. She could not struggle to get a seat in any of the buses. She waited and waited, but could get no transport. Just when she had made up her mind that she would take a taxi if one came along, a car stopped, and the driver asked her where she was going. "Lagos," she said. "Get in," he said, and opened the door for her. Amaka sat down and the man drove away. Amaka was not afraid. She had lived in Lagos. She spoke a bit of Lagos Yoruba. She knew her whereabouts, so she relaxed and waited for whatever the man was about to say or do. But to her surprise, the man said nothing to her. He simply drove on, and Amaka became worried. This was unlike Lagos. In the good old days before the war, when a man stopped to give you a lift and you accepted, you immediately got acquainted and chatted away as if you had known each other for years. Why was this man not saying anything to her? She must start a conversation. "It is kind of you to give me a lift, sir. I am grateful to you," she said. "Oh, the pleasure is mine," the man said. There was an awkward 5-minute silence. Amaka was getting uncomfortable now. Was the man taking her somewhere to kill her? There were so many cases of murder in Lagos. Children had disappeared. Wives and husbands had left for work and had not returned to their homes. And there were no traces of them, not even their bodies. The traffic was low. It was not quite 7 in the morning. They were moving towards Lagos all right. Lagos had changed a good deal, but Amaka still knew her way around. She thought of something to say to the man, but came up with nothing. Then the man spoke. "What part of Lagos are you going to?" he asked. "Broad Street," she replied, relieved. "You mean Yakubu Gowon Street?" he said and smiled for the first time. "Oh, is that what they call the street now?" Amaka said, feeling comfortable now. "Yes, after the name of our head of state, the street was changed from Broad Street to Yakubu Gowon Street," the man said. "Yes, Yakubu Gowon Street," she said. "You have a friend there?" he asked. That's better, Amaka thought. The silence was deafening. "No, I don't have a friend there. I am going to submit a letter of application to the ministry." "Do you have anybody there? Anybody you know, I mean." "I have a note from my brother-in-law to give to one Alhaji there." She said the name of the Alhaji, and the man smiled. "I am the one." Amaka was so pleased she did not know what to say. Was this a coincidence? This was too good to be true. Was this planned? Who planned it? Was she that lucky? She had never regarded herself as a lucky woman. If she had been lucky, her relationship with men would not have been so chaotic and unsatisfactory. Now she was in Lagos to start a new life. Perhaps things would begin to get better for her now. Everybody she had met so far had been good to her. Her sister, her brother-in-law, Adobe and her husband, and now this man. "You know my brother-in-law then?" she asked. "I know not only your brother-in-law, but your sister Ayo as well. I saw you when you were leaving the house this morning. In fact, I saw you the day you arrived. Your sister is not sociable. I think she likes to keep to herself. She strikes me as a very intelligent girl, and I admire the way she takes care of her children. This morning, I woke up at 5:30 and saw you leaving the house. I said to myself, where is this woman going this early morning? I must find out. So I got ready for work and took the bus route. and I saw you at the bus stop still waiting. Well, to cut a long story short, your brother-in-law and my family are great friends. We saved him during the Civil War. When the soldiers came for him in Jos because he was an Igbo, I prevented them from taking him away. I told them that they would take the two of us to whoever their commander was, and they would all be court-martialed. They were afraid and left him alone. Very early the next morning, I sent him away to my village not far away. He was there in hiding for 6 months when I went and fetched him back. By then, things had settled down. The soldiers were no longer as wild as they had been, and we have remained friends ever since. They were now near the ministry. The Alhaji parked the car and opened the door for Amaka. In the office, he asked for the application, called someone to take the details of the application, and asked Amaka to go. She would hear from him later. Amaka was surprised to receive a contract for the supply of toilet rolls worth 10,000 naira. She could not believe it. Toilet rolls worth that much, without her giving anybody any money. It was not so in Onitsha and Enugu. Before one saw the big boss, one first of all saw the messenger, who would then tell the big boss that someone was waiting. If one did not see the messenger, no way. Her files went missing each time she finished a job. When she learned what was expected of her, her files no longer got lost. Before the war, a government official rarely ever asked for a bribe. If you gave him a present when the job was accomplished satisfactorily and you were paid, he was grateful. Alas, it was no longer so. You had to give money first before you were even considered for a contract. To register her company in Lagos, she had to go straight to the man who dealt with it. Of course, she was introduced, and in a matter of days, she got her company registered. It usually took people 2 or 3 years before a company was registered in Lagos. Lagos was good for her. Lagos was kind to her. She must, of course, be very careful. She was not going to be involved again with men. She had had enough. She had not come to Lagos to be a whore. She had come to look for her identity, to start all over again. Nobody was going to mess up her life anymore. With the help of her sister, she was able to raise money from the bank and supply the 10,000 naira worth of toilet rolls to the ministry. She made a gain of 3,000 naira outright. She could not believe it. 3,000 naira of her own. She looked for a flat and moved in. She went to see her friend Adobe from time to time. She told her of her good fortune. Adobe was glad for her, but Amaka could see a bit of envy. She was sensitive and noticed it. It was there for certain, and she decided that she was going to be careful in future. She was not going to take her into her confidence that way. She was not going to let her know how much money she was making. That night, Adobe told her husband, "Darling, we are wasting our time in the ministry, working ourselves to death and getting meager salaries and thinking that we are doing marvelously well. Look at Amaka, who came to Lagos the other day, making so much money in just supplying toilet rolls." "You want a company registered?" he asked. "None of your jokes now." "I am not joking, Adobe. I meant it. If you want to register a company, first resign your appointment in the civil service and start hopping from one ministry to another. It is either one thing or the other. You cannot do both. Perhaps, when you go to these ministries hunting for contracts, you might as well tell them that your husband was killed during the war and that you were left with 15 children to look after. Add also that your husband's elder brother wanted to marry you, but you escaped with your 15 children and..." "Stop!" Adobe shouted and burst into tears. "I am so terribly sorry, darling. Please forgive me. Did I go too far? How can you be a contractor? I cannot bear to think of you as a contractor. Your friend envies you. You have me and you have our children, a good job and this house." "This house is not our own. The government owns it. One day the government could fire you and we would have nowhere to live. We have no house at home either." She had wiped away her tears and was blowing her nose. Why now, Adobe? Why now? Mike was confused. What was happening to his wife? Had Amaka come from Onitsha to unsettle their home? Adobe had never behaved in this way before. She was such a contented wife and mother. Did she count the cost? The headaches that Amaka had to go through before she was able to make that profit? Did they always make profit and no loss? What was Amaka going to give to Alhaji in return for the contract? And would Amaka continue to get that kind of contract? He would speak to the father. His wife was behaving strangely these days. So Mike found himself at the father's sitting room in the evening. Just as he was about to sit down, Amaka drove in a taxi. So Amaka knows the father's house, Mike said to himself. The father was surprised to see them and thought they were together. He served them soft drinks and then Mike got up to go. He followed him to the door. Mike somehow did not want to tell the father why he had come. After all, he thought, how could a priest know the headaches of a marriage when he was married to God? What advice was he going to give him? Was he not overreacting? Surely his Adobe was not a bad wife. He had never complained about her to anyone. Why start now? I was just passing, father, when I thought I should say hello to you. We have not been seeing you lately. You are always welcome to our home. Adobe would particularly like to see you during weekends or any time you are free. I have been busy, Father Macleod said. There was a lot of work to be done, and about a fortnight ago, I was asked to take over the job of Reverend Father Stephen, who had gone home because his mother was ill and he had to be with her. She is 70, and you know how attached he is to his mother. That means you will be going to the mess quite often and conducting mass for the soldiers in their barracks, said Mike. And then he knew why Amaka was there. Mike turned to Amaka. Young lady, it is delightful to see you. We haven't seen you since that day at your friend's. Have you started going to church? Your friend spoke to me about you and your problems. I wonder whether there is anything I can do for you. Amaka had come to see the Reverend Father for an introduction. As she said and believed, she was much luckier in Lagos. She was at her sister Ayo's house when a group of young women came in. They were all contractors. Nearly all of them had lost their husbands during the war, and all of them had moved to Lagos because there were some army jobs to be done. Amaka did not know any of them, and Ayo, knowing how competitive getting contract jobs was, did not introduce her sister to them. Ayo was a schemer. She did not even tell Amaka why she invited them. All she told her was to be attentive. Ayo entertained them lavishly while Amaka listened carefully. Some people are lucky, you know, began one of the women. Who is lucky? Another asked. Madame Oye. All she did was send for her eldest daughter who was in school and left her to the mercy of men. Now she does not know what to do with the numerous contracts she has. She gave me one the other day and I made 2,000 naira outright. I even did not bother to do it myself. I gave it to someone who just handed me 2,000 naira in a week. So I went home and celebrated. Madame Oye must be making a fortune. She has built herself a house in her hometown, brought her aged mother to Lagos after buying a house at Ikeja. She is in the money, said another. And do you know what? Last year, she went for summer and said she would take her mother for summer this year. No, said Ayo. She must have an interpreter. She can neither read nor write. She took a clerk who had been with her and her husband for years, said another. I am just waiting to buy a house in Surulere or Ikeja. When I have done that, I shall leave Lagos and go home. There is a lot to do at home. I don't want my children to be brought up here, said another. All my children will be brought up here. They will speak Yoruba and Hausa and other languages of Nigeria. The country is changing at a terrific rate, and one would be lost if one did not speak at least two of the main languages, said another. They agreed with her. They were the new generation of women contractors. There were about 10 of them. 6 were widows, and the other 4 had left their husbands to start life again. They were all involved in the attack trade during the war. Madame Oye was one of them as well. Her husband was killed in July 1966. He was an officer, and the friends of her husband managed to bring her down to Lagos. She refused to go home to the east. She said she was determined to die in Lagos with her children. She was quite an independent woman, and she feared the kind of welcome she would receive if she went home to be a widow when there was a threat of war. So in Lagos she remained. Her late husband's colleague, when things settled down, helped her by giving her contracts. She struck a business deal with one army captain. Both made fortunes during the war. The deal was so well known in army circles that the captain was quietly retired from the army. So Madame Oye went on making money. The joy of having grows by having. So she went on doing bigger deals. And at one time, it was even said that she had organized the exportation of hemp to Europe. This was being whispered around, but nobody was sure. The way she threw about her money made people start to gossip. She did not bother, but went on making money and spending it. Another woman in the group was a widow as well. In the coup of January 1966, the coup plotters came to her bedroom, knocked at the door, and her husband opened it. They took him away, and she heard a shot. Her 10-year-old son screamed. One of the coup plotters came to the child's bedroom, took him out, and shot him. They took the 2 bodies away. Yet there was another who was engaged in the attack trade during hostilities. She went to one of the war fronts to buy cigarettes, batteries, and golf with some other women attack traders. While they were sleeping in a hut, some stragglers attacked them at night. She was brave. She had a toy gun that belonged to her son. She always traveled with it. She received training in the militia and was able to shoot and to kill. When the war was getting too dangerous, she left the militia and got on with the attack trade, which was equally dangerous. When the straggler woke her up, demanding all she had, which was tied onto her waist, she pointed her toy gun at him. He panicked and she escaped. But the other women in the group were unprepared. They robbed them and shot one who resisted. The incident haunted the woman for the rest of her life. One of the women was in a refugee camp with her 6 children when the planes descended and she lost 3 of her children. Those women all had stories to tell. All they cared for was themselves and their children if they had any. You know, someone told me that the handsome priest was now the army captain. The old one has gone. All the women showed keen interest. It beats me that such a handsome man could be a priest when these beautiful girls go about quarreling over one man. Not all of them go into the priesthood with their eyes open, mind you. They all have one reason or other for their action. But what I hate is what that priest was saying in the papers the other day. I don't see why a paper run by the government should give him such publicity, a woman said. I did not read it, Ayo said. Oh, I read it, Amaka said. This was the first time she had joined in the conversation. I agree with you, Amaka went on. Why should he criticize something he has been a part of all his life? If he wanted to leave the priesthood after taking his vow, he should leave quietly. He was not obliged to fight his war on the pages of the newspaper. Amaka was asked to tell the story. She told it briefly. She was so biased. Whatever was his reason for leaving was his private affair, she concluded. We were talking about the handsome priest who is now captain, one of the youngest of the group said. My dear, we are too old for him. The schoolgirls who are our own daughters have taken over, another said. No, I don't mean it in that sense, the woman who gave the information initially said. What I mean is, we can go through him to the brigade commander for contracts. The one who has gone was unapproachable, and I understand that this one they call MacLeod is sympathetic. He will be able to help. Adobe's name was mentioned as one of the women who could help reach the handsome priest. Nobody said she was going to try. They were in a party mood. but everything registered in Amaka's mind. So that was why she was in the priest's house that day. What audacity! Before then, she would have gone through her friend, but she did not want to. She was finding her feet in Lagos. In a short time, she would find money to pay back the dowry and be free. Paying back the dowry had occupied her mind ever since she left her husband's house in disgrace. She had vowed that if God spared her life, she would work and repay the dowry. She had told Adobe this, but the latter did not understand. "It doesn't matter at all, Amaka. Why does it bother you so much?" she asked. "You do not understand, Adobe. You have children. I haven't. If anything happened to your marriage now, and you left, or your husband left you, you would be alright because you have children. I am not so blessed. According to our custom, if I died tomorrow, I would not be buried until my husband was informed. Obiora is still my husband, whether he drove me away or not. So I will divorce him according to our custom. So when I die, he will have no say. My property will go to my brothers or my uncles. He will have no claim whatsoever." "What if you make a will?" Adobe asked. "I don't really know. I don't know which custom precedes which, the native law and custom, or marriage by ordinance. Things are not clear. But I would first perform the native law and custom before I go into the law courts for divorce. It is cheaper and less involved." Amaka got up when Father MacLeod entered the sitting room again after seeing Mike out. Briefly, she told him why she had come to him, explaining her marriage and her childlessness. She found it so easy to talk to him. This was only their second meeting. Why did she find it easy to speak to this man of God? Was it because she believed that her secret was safe with him? Surely she did not hold strong views about priests and their work. She was a Protestant and not a Roman Catholic, and she was almost indifferent to what they stood for and believed. She believed in the marriage of the clergy if she was asked her opinion. That was more human. If one could still marry and be in the service of God, able to maintain one's family and react favorably to the demands of modern society, then a priest or a pastor was truly a man of God in the service of God. She trusted Father MacLeod. Why, she did not know. When they first met, she had asked about his name, but she had not given a thought to the name and the owner of the name until the day of the party at her sister's house. "And Father, please don't misunderstand my motive for coming to Lagos. I regard Lagos as my second home. I am at peace in Lagos. I have not come to Lagos to be a prostitute. I have come to start again. I have not been abroad, but Lagos is the place for me. Its size intrigues me, its people, everything about Lagos seems to agree with me. I want to live a decent life in Lagos. When you are in Lagos, nobody knows you are there because it is so big. Onitsha is small and it will not do for me. I want to get out of the place where I suffered most. I don't want to be reminded of my life with my husband. It is too painful. And all my brothers and sisters, with the exception of my mother, are in Lagos, Kaduna, and Jos. So I have come to you. I did overhear women talk about your new position. Perhaps you would help me secure a permanent contract there. It would be much easier for me. Then I could be more relaxed and take care of myself. For I believe, Father, that I must have children. The gynecologists have had their say, but I know that a child will come in God's own time." She had finished. The priest went into the kitchen and came out with another bottle of Fanta and some cakes and biscuits and placed them on the table for this unexpected guest. He was at a loss as to what to say. This was the first time this kind of request had been directed to him. He did not know what the job he had to do entailed. He knew he would be seeing a lot of army officers, ministering to their souls and all that. How was he going to ask any favors from them? Amaka did strike him though, the way he looked at her at the first meeting. Did she know and was cashing in? It was obvious to the priest. Amaka herself knew that she had made some impression on the man of God. She was not a child. She was going to exploit the situation. What drove her to see Father MacLeod was just the contract and nothing else. Now other things were working in her mind. She would play it cool. For the first time, she was going to put into practice what her mother had been teaching her. She was not going to wait. She was going for the kill. A priest was also a man capable of manly feelings. Father MacLeod was a man, not a god. Perhaps Father MacLeod had never been tempted. She, Amaka, was going to tempt. That was the task that must be done.